What's the shortest time you've ever stayed at a job? Why was it so short? I worked at a telemarketing company for 1 day, and it was the single worst job I have ever had. I was in college and the money they offered was good, but it was just an absolute shit job. Oh god, same. I lasted about 4 hours. I can't imagine ever being a telemarketer. I'm not knocking those who are. In fact, kudos to those for having to hear people cuss you out and hang up on you 8 hours a day. Worked as a street fundraiser for Amnesty International and quit after 2 weeks after being told several times people like you should be shot. Didn't feel safe approaching anyone anymore, so I had to quit. Our campaign was focused on making it easier for domestic violence offenders to be prosecuted, and for more shelters for victims of domestic violence. Edit. I guess I should have been killed. I'm sorry for what I did. I will never bother good, honest, hard-working people again. I've honestly always thought anyone asking for a donation on the street is a scammer. Had no idea it was a real job. One time this group of kids was collecting donations for ASPCA on the corner near my building. I stopped and listened to one kid's whole spiel. Then when he got to the part where he wanted my personal info, including credit card info, I told him that was not happening, but show me where I could make a donation on their website and I would absolutely do it. He just gawked at me. When these chuggers first appeared, most of them were extremely obnoxious, aggressive, or inappropriate. I've had them try to hug me, grab my phone away whilst I was on a phone call, and one tried to physically prevent me from walking past until I heard him out. A colleague of mine straight up punched one square in the face one time. It may be a good cause, but stopping people on their way to work to beg for money is obnoxious. I was a street canvasser for 3 days. No death threats for me, but our pitch included identity theft while asking for credit card info on the street. Same, but I did it door to door. Lasted 4 weeks after losing a stone in weight from all the walking around the city, knocking on doors, and was repeatedly being threatened and insulted. The only people who lasted past the 4-week probation were the people who lied into getting better. Colasin Flaciotiolin. Street harassment is street harassment. Doesn't really matter, you have a good cause. AIE. It was an agency position, and as I had it explained to me, when and if they need you, they ask you in. I was called the next day and asked why I didn't turn up for my shift, and I said, no one told me I had a shift. After a heated discussion, I pretty much told them to poke it. What field job? Internship for a small video game company. They never released anything because the company didn't even last long enough to finish its first game, which was just a reskin of Candy Crush. This was around 2013-2014. It went under after my internship ended. I was offered a part-time position for crap pay, and after my experience there, only 30 days, I had to give them a pass in the form of IY-MOLO and RRTN-REL-ILORO. Tata. CEO was a rich kid using loan money that his parents secured. He had a couple friends employed that were constantly taking sick days or working from home. CEO would always give speeches about he prides himself on his ability to treat employees equally, without bias. That was a blatant lie, so the 2 to 3 employees that did show up had to take the brunt of the work. The CEO would also go on these tangents about his workplace was such a cool gamer space with yoga balls in place of office chairs, a little break room with a couch and beanbag chairs, and a big flat screen with, I think, an Xbox One and some games. There was also a pool table and some Nerf guns laying around. I don't really know what happened to make the place disappear, but here's a wild and crazy theory. Mismanagement. By chance was the CEO a man by the name of Gene Ralphio Saperstein? If you see yoga balls, it's gonna be a fucking shit place to work at, just saying. Half day. I needed the job and they knew it. I've never in my life have been treated the way I was there. They cussed at me for not knowing where the items were. Maintenance job at an apartment complex. Told me to hurry the heck up. 2 hours in, not knowing where the apartment was that I was supposed to work on. Would not supply the items I needed to complete the repair, saying, "It's your problem, not ours." This was the apartment building management treating their maintenance guy like this. No wonder the one before me left. I plopped the few tools they gave me on the manager's desk, told them I refused to be treated that way, and left. They tried to not pay me for the half day, saying it was during my training period so didn't count. I told them I would have the Department of Labor get it if they weren't willing to. Got cussed out again and given the check. $60 never felt better after being treated like a dumbass. Armala od only at Retan Rut 1 Siut Manor. MLN Mulmi. Kamo. X equals 1 Kaye. With me in the beginning because I didn't know everything right away. It's like they don't realize people need training and instruction on how things are run. 10 minutes? I went in and they said, "Oh, you're not going to be in the assistant manager position. You're gonna be a cashier." I flipped the bird and left. LMAO, that's a record. So you applied, interviewed, and accepted a position for AM. But when you walked in first day, they told you, lol, no go to stand at a till. Not me, but my GF worked at a job only 2 days. Day 1 the boss was drunk. Day 2 he was drunk. And also shouted at everyone. Now I want desperately to know what insane shit would have happened on day 3. Drunk, shouting, and pantsless. 1 week. Because I sucked at the job and was slow at it. This was retail. I do my best work when I can take time to think. 1.5 days as a fresh graduate. A software company that only works with the government. Most employees got there by barely work 2 hours a day and spend 6 hours chatting, doing random stuff. I saw no future there. They were still using basic Stone Age technologies. There was no learning curve, no guidance, and no route to improve my skills and build experience. So I simply walked out. I have no regrets. 2 years later, I found a much better job with huge learning curve, and overnights doubled my salary in 2 years. Got yearly bonuses, and getting multiple offers on LinkedIn every month. 1 week, I got the news halfway into training that my dream job, at the time, had offered me a position. I explained the situation to my manager, and he was fully supportive. Offered good review of me in the future and all. Woohoo, a happy answer. Good for you. I took a teacher aide job because I hadn't found a teaching job. When I got home from day 1, that a job offer, so I called and quit like half an hour after my first day of work. They asked me to at least come in and work the next day so they could find a new person. That was an awkward day. I did my best and all, but it was awkward because people were trying to be nice and I was like, I actually quit, so you don't need to have me introduce myself to the class or show me how to do such and such. 2 days. I worked on a music video doing audio playback. It was short because generally music videos don't take long to make. I got a job selling life insurance last year. I had done sales before and it seemed legit. There were a couple of things that seemed off early on, but I wrote them off as just quirks of sales. I went through about 1 week of course training and then about 2 weeks of field training. I was set to start out on my own soon and attended my first regional sales meeting. In the meeting, this girl gave a testimonial about the company and described her climb up the chain. She talked about how she was now basically just making money because she had a great team and that she believed all of them could have great teams of their own. I am not sure what clicked, but I thought, this sounds like in MIM, and sure enough, with some quick googling I found that this company really was one. I got up mid-meeting without saying a word, grabbed my stuff and left. I made it almost 4 weeks. Without realizing I was working for an MLM. I felt and still feel like such an idiot for not realizing it sooner. Primerica? I had 2 jobs I got around the same time when I was in my early 20s. One was at a grocery store. The other was a local pizza shop in a college town. The owner of the pizza shop was Greek and was so excited to hire me. He kept saying, "I'm gonna teach you the pizza business," in a really sweet Greek accent. Because it was a college town, the pizza place stayed open until 3 a.m. They wanted me to work from about 5 or 6 p.m. to close. Also, I lived the next town over, only about 3 miles away. I quit the pizza job after 3 days for 2 reasons. I kept burning my arms on the pizza oven and I kept nearly falling asleep on the drive home at 3 a.m. I felt really bad quitting on the sweet Greek owner, but I was literally scarred from working late. I lasted about a week longer at the grocery job. I was a cashier, which I didn't mind, but the manager kept sending me out to get carts when it was slow and allowing the other cashiers to just chat. It was really hot, tiring work and I was kind of lazy at the time. I got a job working for a certain double-letter coffee shop next, which I love because of the tips, but hated smelling like coffee every day. I lasted about 2 years at that one. I worked on a cash register when I was in high school, and loved it when they would send me out to push carts. I got to take a break from customers and be outside. Got offered a role whilst at uni. Supermarket job on Saturday and Sundays 4 till 10 and paid like £12 an hour, so was a decent uni job. However, after receiving my first shift timetable, I realized that due to me being an ignorant moron and the advert being unclear, I had signed up to work 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. Waking up at 3 a.m. 2 days a week is not worth it. I rang up and canceled before my first shift and got a job in a coffee shop a few weeks later. You did the right thing. I have worked in a supermarket and let me tell ya, that extra £4 an hour is not worth the mind-numbing, overworked hell that it is. 6 hours. Bitter old crone insulted me, my family and everything I stand for in that time. 2 words, vector marketing, stayed with it all of one day. I got hired on the spot at a wholesale warehouse-style store. Was never called in for orientation. 3 months. Racist managers. It was like the Twilight Zone. Suddenly a very diverse staff was getting turned out and replaced with people who were pale and blonde. One day, I made the mistake of telling them how to find my music Mao. I was told whatever I do in my personal time is fine and that they really wanted to hear. So I tell them how to find it. The next day, I mysteriously am now not a good fit, and they won't tell me why. I put out a diss track the next day, not naming them at all, so they would have to be looking for my new music. I get a call the day after from the CEO who has never talked to me before. He starts off trying to play it cool. Then about 5 minutes in, starts yelling at me like I know about the song, bro, and getting super macho with me. He demands that I take the song down or else he will have 1,000 Indians ruin my reputation forever and he will sue me. Every time I simply ask a question, he makes the time sooner that he demands I remove it by. He claims that he never heard my music before that. Diss said that I'm clearly very smart and talented to have come up with what did so soon, and that he is also a musician and can help me be more positive, lol. He also suggested I come and actually have a meeting with him to discuss working with him after all. But at that point he had already lost my trust and I have no idea what his motives would have even been. I worked at a club for one night collecting and cleaning the glasses. It was hectic. I had already worked in a kitchen though, so I was ready for the pressure. I was a fresh-faced 18-year-old that probably looked 15 and I got a lot of comments from patrons that I looked really young. I'm assuming that's why I never got called back, because the boss told me no one ever does that. Well, on their first night, paid me some cash and then never called me again. My buddy showed up for a new job doing oil changes Monday morning. Nobody knew he was coming. Didn't know who he was. Didn't know anyone had hired him. Couldn't find any paperwork. He left after an hour, applied at Amazon and got a $20 per hour warehouse job the next day. Wait a minute. How did he get $20 an hour at Amazon? Everyone has been telling me that it only Lola. I got a contract job in Austin, Texas that was supposed to last 6 months. I was relieved from the contract after a week because they said I wasn't working out. It was the fault of my interviewer, who hired me for skills I had that weren't pertinent to the position. A few weeks, because then the job ended. 3 minutes into my job as a person who sat at a giant tables assembling lamps, I didn't return from Lieutenant CE. 1. I worked at a meat processing facility for 2 weeks because I wanted a full paycheck. They paid only $12 USD per hour and you had to touch raw meat all day. Worked at a golf club restaurant as a dishwasher for 1 week. One of the chefs was a particularly arrogant prick and would throw buckets at me that had raw meat in them, so I was constantly getting sprayed with little bits of festering pork. I was always belittled for not washing dishes fast enough because I was making sure they were spotless. When I reminded them of the fact that I'm on the autistic spectrum and asked them to go a bit easier on me, the chef said, and I quote, "Yes, I know there's something wrong with you. You make it very obvious." I handed in my resignation the next day. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy! Exclamation mark. I worked 2 shifts at a shoe shop when I was 16. 4 hours on a Wednesday and 6 on a Sunday. I spent the days in between those 2 shifts deeply saddened by my own existence. And after the second shift, I vehemently told my parents I refused to work in retail. One day, they pulled a bait and switch on what they told me the requirements were. And when they unveiled the switch, I nodded, smiled, and accepted another job offer. Left my brand new badge on my desk at the end of the day, and dropped my parking pass off at the security gate. I went in. They told me, "Oh, don't worry, it's informal, you're just gonna meet everyone and we'll show you around." When I got there, they introduced me to my trainer, who proceeded to show me my workstation, give me her number, and go home. So I was there, working with zero training or warning. I hadn't even been officially hired, so I just ducked out the next day and told them thanks but no. A week, I got offered another job with better opportunities and twice the salary. Bonanza. Went to orientation and worked a day and decided I would prefer doing something else. Started working at a movie theater a couple days later. Worked at CVS for about 4 to 5 months, left to go back to Walmart cause CVS sucked. Terrible pay. Couldn't call out cause no one would be able to cover. Didn't accumulate sick time. 3 weeks in a pet store and it was the first job I had in my life. Only done it because it was an assignment for a subject in college. Each of us need to find a job for 3 weeks and prepare a presentation about the company, store, what we did during those 3 weeks, and how we can relate the things we did at work with our actual program of study, which is healthcare. Pretty amazing experience, especially in the end, because I stated to the store owner that I don't mind being an unpaid employee, but he still gave me some salary to thank me. I've had 3 one-shift jobs. Asterisk collecting signatures for some environmental advocacy group. At the end of the day, they said there had been a quota and I hadn't met it. Asterisk delivering pizzas. I forgot the soda and had to go back. Burned about 45 extra minutes doing so. That was unacceptable. Copyright delivering newspapers. Showed up at 1 a.m. to start the shift. Felt so wrecked at the end of it that I called them and said I couldn't do it. I worked at Pier 1 for 2 days. They wanted me to do a floor reset on my 3rd day. which is essentially pushing heavy furniture all over the store starting at 4 a.m. It was never mentioned to me that that was going to be one of my responsibilities. So I said fuck that and just didn't show up. OME. A week or a week and a half, I do not remember. I got into a car accident and was never released by a doctor to lift over 50 pounds. The job was a package handler for UPS. Ouch. Have you been able to find other work? 2 hours. Fuck digging holes. Jumped in my car at morning tea without telling anyone. Blocked their number and got the hell out of there. 3 days for a remote customer service job in February. Management was a mess. Unorganized. Rude. First day was terrible because they waited until the last minute to ask for important stuff they had already asked us before multiple times. Super stressful and got panic attacks during shift. 4 hours. It was a pet store chain at a mall when I was a teenager. Most of the shift was fine, but the final hour when you have to close down the store for the night. You have to clean all the dog and eat a tile of low mealy. OE. You're spraying hoses on the trays, and feces water droplets are flying everywhere. It's beyond disgusting. I noped right out of there. About 4 hours. I started a telemarketing job that was very strict on using their script. I went to lunch and then home. 2 weeks in a plastic factory. 12-hour shifts. Hot. No AC. Massive machines producing tremendous heat and noise. You can't talk to anyone because you're separated. Terrible smell of burning plastic all day. I got into car accident on my way to work on first day. 1 week. I was hired to feed inserts into a machine at the local newspaper. The machine didn't operate as advertised, so they scrapped it and me as the least senior member of the staff. After testing it out, RN 1 4-hour shift at a local buffet-style restaurant, similar to a Golden Corral. 1 day, office secretarial job at a music shop. That's when I decided office jobs aren't for me. 2 days, got a job as a waitress at a new fancy restaurant in Manhattan. I mention this because what they did was unusual for their caliber of restaurant, and I started on a Saturday. The restaurant hadn't even opened yet and I was actually asked to do heavy lifting, carrying moving boxes, setting up tables and chairs, etc. And I was never told this was going to be part of my job. I asked when I would get my first paycheck after the second day of this. And the manager said, "When you start working we'll discuss it." Yeah? So these 2 days were free labor. Hire a fucking moving company. Edit. I just went to their website to check their prices. This whole thing happened like 8 years ago, so I'm sure they've raised them. However, one entree is over $100 and the appetizers are tiny and not less than $35 a pop. The way they treated their staff does not reflect their price point. Probably 1 month. Needed a part-time bar job to get me through uni. Manager was a massive psycho and wouldn't accept sick days or if you were late for a valid reason. One guy was running late because there were massive delays on the trains. He lived about an hour away. He let everyone know, but when he finally got in, the manager was fuming and sent him back home. Another dude came down with the flu and let the manager know ASAP that he wouldn't be able to come in. He got sent a long-ass text message from the manager who called him a disappointment and said that if he didn't come in, he would be fired. Poor guy had to work a double shift in a busy bar with a damn fever. There were times in which the manager would lose it with customers. She would also bully people out if their face didn't fit. That mixed with just how busy it was and how many hours we had to do was enough for me. And just to note, I've been working in bars and restaurants for a few years and I'm well aware of the long hours that come with the job. However, I've never had to do 30 hours in 2 days before I worked at that place. It was ridiculous. Did we have the same manager? I seriously don't get how someone actually ends up like that. It's like cheesy movie villain level. Same thing with the calling in sick. Dude had the flu at our bar. Threatened to be fired. Still came in, etc. He lasted about 20 minutes before throwing up in the trash can under the bar in front of customers. Luckily management kept his job for him. But somehow that bitch didn't get in any trouble at all for doing that to him. 0 days. Got hired at a small flight school to be part-time flight instructor. When I got my work schedule, they assigned me to non-paid front desk duty at 30 hours a week for the first month on the job in order to pay down the debt of anticipated work training costs. I no-showed my first day and immediately quit via email. I made it to break about 4 hours at a slaughterhouse. I was at the calf skinning station where an electric chainsaw was used to rip the skin off recently killed calves. Part of the job was sticking the severed head to a sharpened hook and removing the tongue. 10 months. In that time I had single-handedly improved the way the project functioned and creating a new method of displaying data with the software to back it up. This one chart has now spread across the entire company. Navy called louder though. I worked at a coffee shop that wanted to be Starbucks but wasn't. Not that Starbucks is great, but these people were all about appearances and they didn't care for the STFF one bit. They overworked. Everyone had 4 supervisors for 7 staff. Yeah, and asked people to smile all the time. They even convinced one of the supervisors to ask people to smile all the time when people were miserable, because the hours were brutal and the pay was awful. I was one of the supervisors. I left after a month. They closed a little after that. I worked at a grocery store for 2 months over a summer during college. I was like 19 at the time, and every person I worked with was in around their 50s and had worked at the grocery store since they graduated high school. They hated their jobs and each other. They would talk shit about each other behind their backs constantly. One guy was so sexist and wouldn't do certain things that he considered women's work. I worked in the produce department and after 2 days of training, they had me start closing by myself. I had no idea what I was doing and then would get yelled at the next day for not doing it right. I stuck it out for the summer. The only reason I didn't quit was because I really need money for school and finding summer jobs are a lot harder in the middle of summer. The store I worked at was a brand new store in a small local chain. They built it in a very out-of-the-way location that had several much bigger grocery stores close by. That this new store was always extremely slow. They lost money every day on the store. My parents told me that the chain closed several stores now and are on the brink of going out of business. Real jobs? Shortest was about 2.5 years. But I was looking to escape from pretty much my first week. The owner of the company, it sold lighting, was a narcissistic asshole. Behaviors often similar to the current president. Everything that went well was all his doing. Nothing ever his fault. When it went wrong and screamed at people in front of everybody for any little thing that did go wrong. People who were the best one day but were the worst and idiots a day later. Wanted us to do illegal, immoral things to make him look better. Like fake Yelp reviews. I was able to move to a desk further away from his office. Originally was right outside his office's door. And I liked most of my other coworkers. A lot of Eastern Europeans who seemed much more immune to such behaviors. When Great Recession hit, he started laying people off 2 to 4 at a time. No announcement of layoffs, etc. And it seemed like it was typically tied to how the stock market, his portfolio, was doing rather than company's financials. When he threatened a bunch of our jobs over something so stupid. We were QA testing new website functionality and he was upset some of us were pairing fixtures of different finishes in test projects. We were IT web, marketing people, not lighting designers or interior decorators. We all started looking hard for new jobs, and I was the second to land one and get the fuck out of there. Still at that job 11 years later. 3 weeks working for a custom furniture designer. 1. Disrespectful environment, things like calling people retarded and telling me on my second day that she doesn't have time to babysit me with instructions. 2. Unreasonable expectations regarding output to photorealistic renderings in 2 days. 30. Technical shop drawings of furniture in 1 day. 3. Suggestion of me stealing office supplies. Felicia, I have no use for your clear labeling tape. 4. Poor salary, little chance of raise or growth within company. 5. Nickel and dime attitude, constant references to how long I'm taking and how much it's costing, as though I love staying in the office. 6. Took pages from my sketchbook and produced my furniture designs with no recognition or compensation to me. 7. No work security, boss fired her accountant and PR person within 1 month and shopped around for a new drafter while I was there. She blatantly lied regarding how many people filled the position before me. She mentioned 1 when there have clearly been at least 3. 8. Boss did not keep her word regarding minimum work hours per week. However, she still expected me to be at her beck and call at a moment's notice. 9. High-handed assumption that I will be able and willing to take work home at no notice. 10. Continuously called me by the wrong name. About 30 minutes. I was placed at a call center for a company. I don't remember what they did. We started training and took a tour of the production floor. One of the lead agents, someone who walks around answering questions, was my wife's ex-husband, who had been arrested and convicted of possession of child porn and whatever it's called when you chat online with a minor and try to meet up with them. One day, went to work for an attorney. He was a rude, condescending asshole. Went in the next day wearing jeans and a tee. His partner saw me and said, "Oh." Walked to the offending asshole, took my key off the ring. Yes. After 1 day he gave me a key, and when he extended his hand to take it, I just dropped it on the floor and told him to kiss my ass. The best part was that I was the only employee not on vacation that week. He had 6 closings that day and none of the paperwork had been done yet. I wonder what happened the rest of that day. I quit after 1 week. I worked in a laboratory that was basically built to hide all the illegal shit the company we were working for were doing. Wore a mascot costume for $10 per hour when I was 16. I lasted 1 day because of all the drunks molesting me and thrusting me around, not realizing an underage teen was inside. Also, the inside of the costume smelled terrible. So gross. 1 day, at a fast food place, was put on register about 15 minutes after clocking in. Was told that there were no bathroom breaks or lunch break for an 8-hour shift, and left alone with the lunch rush. Turns out the manager was stealing quite a lot of money from the company and was arrested a few weeks after I walked out. 3 months. A consulting job that was a completely bad fit for me. I left a relaxed consulting job with a good boss and good work-life balance because I wanted more exciting, interesting projects than he was bringing in. And this new company was bigger, had more employees, and lots more clients. I was given a fancy title and a huge paycheck. Then the projects were the most beginner level. Grunt work, bullshit, not at all interesting. And apparently they all worked at random hours. And thought nothing was wrong with scheduling me for a client call at 6:30 a.m. No. I left when it was clear they weren't going to treat me like an experienced employee. Left without anything lined up, but landed a much better job less than 2 months later. No stupid hours. My experience is valued, and my team is great. No regrets about leaving with nothing lined up. Uy Adel la br of Ramo. Com call kunai meal eli maor sele mealy. 11's corporate job are in high demand. Walked out of an orientation session for an advertised office job, which turned out to be telemarketing for a photocopier toner scam, which might have been okay if they were upfront about it and said, "Hey, it's toner. Just sell it." Our new supervisor was a flaky teenager who started going into a weird rant about how tough they were about the formal business dress code. I didn't argue, just picked up my briefcase and walked out the door. Boba place that had just opened up while I was in high school. Owner didn't know shit about boba or running a business. Left because he was a creep who hit on me and my best friend while talking about how much he hated his wife. Was there for less than 2 weeks. He refused to give me my tips. Oh, late RNTRL. Pretty sure they shut down pre-COVID, lol. Bye. After their orientation, when we were all sitting around tables like a kindergarten classroom, they had all these people come and talk about how it's the best job ever, and they went on and on and on trying to brainwash as many people as possible. Then the big guy started rambling on about how great we all were and so much positive energy in the room and stuff. One felt like I was at some Jonestown thing and the boss was Jim Jones. We all looked at each other like, this is fucking weird. I left and never came back. It was like a cult. Very, very odd. Half day. Fried chicken duty at a grocery store deli in my early 20s. It was the grossest environment, with obnoxious, reckless people, and I just couldn't do it. When I got my lunch break, I drove away and never came back, lol. I reported for my first day at a paper route, a naive 18 years old. The guy who was gonna take me out on the route cut out a fat rail of cocaine on his steering wheel and snorted it before asking, "Ready to go?" Quote, I said I forgot something in my car, got in it and left. All in all, I had a paper route for 15 minutes, doing dishes every day for $6 a month. I worked at a gas station for about 4 hours. IWA's going through a period of crippling anxiety. Ended up having a massive panic attack and quitting. 4 hours. I was working front desk at a hotel. When it came time for lunch, the owner informed me that they don't allow lunch breaks or 15s. She said I wouldn't be allowed to sit or leave the front desk, just stand there for 8 hours and wait. I grabbed my stuff and told her I wouldn't be coming back. One day, I was hired on for a position, but on my first day I was told that position was filled, but a lower-paying part-time position was still open if I was interested. I really needed the money, so I took it. I had an interview for another part-time job the next day and they hired me basically on the spot. I make over 2x what I would have made at the first place and I have no regrets. I worked at a record label store for 3 hours. Hoping to gain experience, I was asked to list the owner's old clothes on eBay. Half of a day, I was hired at an advertising firm. It was so hectic that I got right to work and didn't get any sort of onboarding. I worked on some layouts with another guy and after a few hours we went off to lunch. We came back and the receptionist told us to wait where we were. The account exec guy in charge of the account we were working on came out and told us that the company was fired by the client. So that was it. We were done working there. I was taken back to get my jacket and other stuff and was out the door. I got paid for the whole, so that was nice. I applied for a management position at an IT firm. I got offered the job and asked if I could come in for one paid day to see if I liked the job. It was on an off day for my regular job, so win-win, right? Oh hell no. This was an outbound sales position where literally every position had manager in the title. IWA's shown my desk with the phone, given an expectation sheet, and got so loud security had to escort me out on the building. I yelled at the guy who lied and lied in the interview. I was led to believe this was an IT management position. The day I came in for first day training was a 180 from the way it went in the interview, so I let the guy have it verbally. and security asked me to leave. Just under 3 months, I got moved to third shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The new hours started to ruin my social life and education. I fell asleep at the wheel one day and didn't go back to work the next 2 hours. I was hired as a part-time personal trainer for a local gym while I was in college. First day, they asked me to come in to go over some paperwork. I went in, met with the manager for a total of S minutes. Then he told me that he had an errand to run and left me working by myself. I hadn't even signed a work contract yet. I had no idea how to check members in and got yelled at by a member because I didn't know where the extra towels were. I called the manager to see when he would be back, but he was obviously annoyed and told me to just stay until the front desk person got there for their shift. When the front desk worker showed up, she didn't even seem fazed that I was left by myself on my first day, working a position that I had not agreed to work, and I wasn't technically an employee yet because I hadn't signed a contract. The manager called me the next day and asked for me to come in again. I said fuck that and demanded I get paid for the 2 hours I worked. He tried to tell me some bullshit that they always have a trial run with new employees before they officially hire them on. I wasn't surprised when they shut down a few months later. Burger King for 2 weeks when I was a teenager. The manager was apparently an ex-pimpin', was super threatening, and an employee offered me weed the first night. I regret only not taking him up on it. One day, working construction, I cut the skill saw cord. Boss not pleased. I've worked some shitty jobs in my time, mostly when I was a poor college student. My record is 4 days. I took on a temp job at a feed supplier. Day 1 I was presented with a broken garden fork and told to empty out the shipping container that was full of sawdust. At first I thought they were hazing me, but no, they seriously wanted me to do this. Asked for a mask, was laughed out of my supervisor's office. Somehow suffered through this for 4 days. Before the final day I marched into my supervisor's office intending to quit. He informed me I was laid off before I even got the chance. I practically skipped out of the office. It's the only time I've ever been grateful to be laid off. Being laid off also meant I was next in line for whatever came up at the temp agency next. Quitting or being fired meant you went to the back of the line. Spent the rest of the summer in a fruit packing factory and was promoted to supervisor after 2 weeks. Good job. 1 year, I was offered £7,000 more plus car to move, so I did. 3 weeks. It was a landscaping job, and the owner was a convicted felon that liked to slip into the bathroom and take a bump of coke every now and then. He promised me gas money for using my own truck to use his trailer to haul lawnmowers and weed eaters. And after a few weeks of this not happening, even after I submitted a written bill, I just stopped showing up. I was at a bad spot financially at the time, or wouldn't have stuck around even that long. I quit a summer job after I was scheduled to work 4th of July weekend, and they wanted me to cover half the restaurant alone. That was about 25 to 30 tables. It was a popular restaurant in a water park, so 4th of July would be their busiest weekend of the summer. Other servers had called out for the weekend, leaving 3 of us for that weekend, and me having been there the longest, almost 3. Titola LTNMUC VA Mia MEE MAMEM 9 EOC OE Loma Teme Lem 4 days, though I wanted to quit after 1 hour. Lab tech in a major private medical diagnostic lab. Hygiene conditions were deplorable. 100 open urine specimens on a bench at one time. Bare minimum personal protective equipment. Smells were making me physically sick. They wanted me to learn to process the poo samples. I raised an issue with this as I was already nearly vomiting from the urines. They told me, too bad. Get used to it. I quit the next day. It paid less than working at McDonald's. One day, I was hired at a childcare place as a teacher when I finished my undergrad. They told me I was hired an hour after my interview and asked if I could start the next day. They didn't even wait for a background check. My first day, I could tell the other teachers were miserable. So many red flags. After that shift, I knew I'd be miserable too. I told them I wasn't coming back. Factory worker for 1 week in 2008. Edit. I just remembered that I tried pizza delivery once. I had a good boss, but the job wasn't for me. I lasted one shift, 2 days. Took a job as a golf course superintendent and realized after I started that they were lying about the budget and availability of cash to help me do my job successfully. So I walked. 3 weeks. My old boss basically lied to get me on the job at his restaurant, and I was a naive 16-year-old, so I believed him. Once I started, my health declined rapidly because of the stress. I was working as soon as I got out of school at 3:10 until 12 almost every night. Not to mention I was bullied by my shift manager, who refused to tell me how to do anything and instead watched me guess how to do things, then correcting me after I messed up. I also wasn't paid after 9:30. I went to the doctor for a regular checkup and my blood pressure and heart rate was way too high. I also had blood, ketones, and protein in my urine. I was a normally healthy teen girl and had no reason for all of that to be going on. After a series of tests and doctor visits, I was told I needed to stop any work or sports because it seemed like I had kidney disease and was at risk of kidney failure. I immediately stopped working and at that point could hardly stand long enough to get something to drink. A week or so after I stopped working, I went to a kidney specialist and my urine was perfectly fine. I went to my clinic for a follow-up and my blood pressure and heat rate were fine as well. My doctors chalked it up to anxiety, stress, and long hours of physical labor causing my heart rate and blood pressure spike, which in turn started affecting my kidneys. I remember feeling like a child again during those few weeks because I would have to ask my mom to come to the bathroom with me, because I passed out one night while peeing and nearly busted my head open, and it scared me. Not that she minded, of course, but still. I had a friend due to start at Lehman Brothers in 2008. He was a new graduate and was moving from London to New York for the job. His first day was due to be the 15th of September. He arrived at the office in the morning only to be told there was no job anymore as the company was bankrupt. 3 months. Summer job when I was younger. 15 minutes maybe. I had just started a job at a family-run fun center. My first job was to clean some vandalism off the building from the night before. No biggie, I thought, until I saw what they had done. I was figuring some spray paint and just use some goof to get it off. They smeared feces on the walls and windows. Not just a little, but they must have done a Taco Bell run earlier in the evening, because I never saw that much or smelled crap like that ever in RNROEEE root RMRNM root ELA. Eali Rerim ETECIA. Have covered 40 feet in length on the walls and half a dozen windows. The area was so far from a spigot I could not run a hose over to wash it off. He wanted me to use a bucket and brush. I walked back into the office and told him no and quit. A couple of hours. I got hired after the interview. Got home, pondered about the boss being an asshole, quit immediately. One day, I was 16 and the parents were pressuring me to get a job for weekends, summer. I applied a bunch of places, but one of 2 places to call me back was a local grocery store to be a bagger. I hated it. Didn't like the whole stand in one place for hours at a time aspect of it. People didn't want me touching their groceries because I was clearly new, and the training tour of the place was half-hearted at best. The local amusement park batting cages par 3 golf course called that evening, and when they offered me a job. I biked back to the grocery store and quit immediately. The amusement park was the best summer HS job. Hard work, but generally outdoors and usually fun. Hey, it's my cake day, I forgot that. Happy cake day. Well, this was out of left field. Happy cake day. Worked as a SIM card seller for one shift. The job required chasing people in the mall, talking them into buying the SIM cards. And they were less than amused, because clearly no one needed the cards. One guy even decided to fuck with me. He told me he'd buy the card if I answered enough of his questions. Then with every question he walked away, so I'd have to follow him to answer. And finally, he said he didn't really need a card and just left. At the end of the day, I was so devastated that I cried on my way home. I sold 0 cards that day, but the manager who trained me still called me 2 times begging me to stay. Seems like the SIM card business needs employees that badly. Good thing you quit. Mall kiosk people are the worst, the absolute worst. I avoid eye contact and ignore them the best I can, but I've still been whistled at as if I'm an animal. One day, after I saw what it was like, I pieced out of there. Porn star. I got fired for sexual harassment on the first day of the job. More posts from the AskReddit community. 134K Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a racy itlavnrce nan eee werletic arver lt realm mal irg." 87.4K England just announced that every Englishman over the age of 18 automatically become organ donors with ability to opt out. How do you feel about this? Equals in 83.4K people who force others into listening to the music by driving a car with windows. SATs equals opened in the volume 100% on. Why do you do that? A. Say 672K people of Reddit. What is a surprisingly unknown survival fact that everyone should day at RG?